What do you want? She asked. Pranked, you? And her eyes changed. Now she won't let me go. The morning shift on Diplomatic Station Harmony began like any other. Jake Martinez adjusted his headset and stared out the observation window at the alien ship docked to their station. The sleek vessel from the Zephyrian Empire gleamed silver against the backdrop of Kepler 442b, a blue-green planet that humans might never set foot on. Another day, another boring conversation about trade routes. Jake muttered to himself as he reviewed his notes. 3 months into humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, and the excitement had worn off. What remained were endless discussions about mineral rights, territorial boundaries, and diplomatic protocols. His colleague Tommy Chen floated over in the zero-gravity section of the communications bay. Ready for your daily chat with our alien friend? Jake shrugged. Ambassador Velthara is professional enough. Just wish these talks actually led somewhere interesting. The Zephyrians were fascinating beings, standing nearly 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under artificial lights. But what made them truly unique were their eyes, large, oval-shaped, and constantly shifting colors based on their emotions. Jake had learned that blue meant professional courtesy, green showed curiosity, and purple indicated mild annoyance. 5. Credit says you can make her eyes turn purple today, Tommy grinned, pulling out his tablet to start their usual betting pool. That's not fair. I made her annoyed yesterday just by asking about their weather patterns. Jake replied, settling into his communication chair. The other communications officers gathered around, their own work temporarily forgotten. First contact. Protocols were supposed to be serious business, but 3 months of routine had made everyone a bit relaxed about the whole thing. Jake activated the communication link. The holographic projector hummed to life, displaying the interior of the Zephyrian ship. Ambassador Velthara appeared on screen, her tall frame graceful even in the alien environment. Her eyes were their usual diplomatic blue, and her translator device rendered her melodic voice into clear English. Good morning. Communications Officer Martinez, I trust you are well? Good morning, Ambassador. Yes, thank you. Ready to continue our discussions about the mining rights in Sector 7. Behind him, Jake could hear Tommy making exaggerated yawning sounds. The other officers tried to suppress their laughter, even Sarah Kim, their supervisor, was smiling as she pretended to review reports. Velthara's eyes remained blue, but Jake noticed a slight tilt of her head. Before we begin, I must ask the standard diplomatic question for today's session. This was new. Jake had never heard of any standard diplomatic questions. He glanced back at his colleagues, who looked equally confused. Tommy shrugged and mouthed, Go with it, of course, Ambassador. What's the question? Velthara straightened, her posture becoming more formal. What do you want from this alliance? Communications Officer Martinez? The question seemed simple enough, but something about the way she asked it made the room feel different. The other officers stopped their joking and paid attention. Even Sarah looked up from her reports. Jake was about to give the standard diplomatic response about mutual cooperation and shared prosperity when Tommy whispered loudly, Tell her you want her. The suggestion was so ridiculous that Jake almost laughed out loud. The idea of breaking diplomatic protocol in such a silly way seemed hilarious. After months of boring, formal conversations, What do you want from this alliance? Velthara repeated, her voice carrying a strange note of anticipation. Jake looked at his colleagues, all grinning and waiting for his response. Sarah was too far away to stop him, and the moment felt too perfect to waste. How often did someone get to prank an alien ambassador? You, Jake said with a straight face, looking directly into the camera. I want you. The reaction was immediate and completely unexpected. Velthara's eyes, which had been their standard diplomatic blue, suddenly blazed with brilliant golden light. Not the soft color changes Jake had seen before, but an intense, almost blinding glow that made him squint at the screen. The ambassador's mouth opened slightly, and she made a sound that the translator couldn't process, something between a gasp and a musical note. Her hands, which had been folded professionally in front of her, pressed against her chest. Did I break something? Jake asked. His joking mood disappearing instantly. Behind him, the communications bay fell completely. Silent. Tommy's grin faded as he stared at the screen. Sarah Kim moved closer, her expression serious. Vilthara's golden eyes never left Jake's face. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, but with an intensity that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. You want me? I was just... It was a joke, Jake started to explain, but something in her expression stopped him. The golden glow in her eyes seemed to pulse, growing brighter and dimmer in a rhythm that reminded Jake of a heartbeat. Vilthara leaned closer to her communication screen, studying Jake's face with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. Ambassador, are you all right? Sarah Kim stepped into view of the camera. Perhaps we should reschedule this session. But Vilthara didn't acknowledge Sarah at all. Her golden eyes remained fixed on Jake. You spoke truth, communications officer. Martinez, I can see it in your expression, hear it in your voice patterns. Truth, no, ambassador. It really was just... The golden light means recognition, Vilthara interrupted, her voice taking on an almost dreamy quality. I have never seen golden light before. My species believed it was only legend. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of recognition? Vilthara's lips curved into what might have been a smile, though on her alien features it looked strange and unsettling, the kind that changes everything. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the human communications bay in complete silence. Jake stared at the blank screen, trying to process what had just happened. What did you do? Sarah Kim asked quietly. I don't know. Jake replied honestly. I really don't know. Outside the observation window, the Zephyrian ship's lights began to pulse in the same rhythm as Vilthara's eyes had been glowing. Throughout the ship, other lights started joining the pattern until the entire vessel seemed to be breathing. With golden light, Tommy Chen broke the silence with a shaky laugh. I don't think you won the bet, Jake. I think you just started something we don't understand. As if to confirm his words, Jake's communication console began beeping with an incoming message. The sender, Ambassador Vilthara. The message was simple, but somehow ominous. We need to talk. Jake stared at the screen, realizing that his simple joke had just changed everything between two civilizations. The golden glow in Vilthara's eyes had been beautiful and terrifying, and something told him that this was only the beginning. The emergency meeting in Conference Room Alpha had been going on for 2 hours. Jake sat at the metal table, feeling like he was on trial. Round him, senior diplomats, scientists, and military officers discussed his situation as if he wasn't there. The Zephyrian ship hasn't moved from our docking port, reported Captain Morrison, the station commander. Ambassador Vilthara refuses to speak with anyone except Communications Officer Martinez. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's xenobiologist, pulled up holographic displays of Zephyrian anatomy. I've been studying their species files all night, the golden eye color Jake described. It's not in any of our records. What does that mean? Asked Director Hayes from Earth Command, his image flickering on the main screen. It means we're dealing with something completely unknown. Dr. Vasquez replied, every emotion, every state of mind the Zephyrians experience has a corresponding eye color. We've documented dozens of them over the past 3 months. But gold, that's new. Jake finally spoke up. She mentioned it was legend, something her people thought was just a story. All eyes turned to him. Director Hayes leaned forward on the screen. Martinez, I need you to understand how serious this situation is. The Zephyrian Empire represents our first chance at peaceful contact with an alien civilization. We cannot afford to mess this up. Sir, I understand that, but I honestly thought it was just a harmless joke. Captain Morrison tapped his fingers on the table. The problem is, it's not harmless anymore. Their entire diplomatic team is requesting information about you specifically. They want to know your family history, your psychological profile, even your medical records. They want what? Jake felt his stomach drop. Dr. Vasquez brought up another display, according to their requests. They're trying to understand what they call your essence signature. It's a term that doesn't translate well. but it seems to relate to some kind of biological or spiritual compatibility. Sarah Kim, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Jake, you need to see the communication logs from this morning. She activated her tablet, and Velthara's voice filled the room. But instead of her usual professional tone, she sounded almost excited. Communications Officer Martinez possesses the directness of spirit our ancient texts describe. His words were spoken without fear, without calculation. This is the mark of one who could lead our people beyond their current limitations. The recording continued. I request immediate access to study this human. His response pattern suggests he may be the first to demonstrate what our ancestors called chosen recognition, the ability to see beyond diplomatic barriers and speak truth without compromise. Director Hayes rubbed his forehead. Great, they think you're some kind of chosen leader. But I'm not, Jake protested. I'm a communications officer who made a stupid joke. Dr. Vasquez looked thoughtful. That might be exactly why this happened. Jake, what do you know about Zephyrian culture? The basics. They're highly organized, value diplomacy, and have been spacefaring for thousands of years, right? But what we didn't know until today is that they apparently have legends about beings who can break through their formal social structures. Someone who speaks directly from the heart instead of following protocols. Tommy Chen, who had been allowed into the meeting as a witness, raised his hand nervously. Sir, there's something else. The Zephyrian ship has been scanning our station all morning. Not weapons scans, more like they're studying our architecture, our daily routines. Captain Morrison's expression darkened, studying us how they seem particularly interested in areas where Jake spends time. The communications bay, his quarters. Even the cafeteria where he eats lunch. Jake felt increasingly uncomfortable. Are you saying they're watching me? It's more than that, Doctor. Vasquez said, pulling up new data. I've been analyzing the energy readings from their ship. The golden light pattern we saw yesterday, it's still happening. Their entire vessel is pulsing in rhythm with what appears to be Velthara's biological signals. What does that mean in practical terms? Director Hayes asked. It means ambassador. Velthara's reaction to Jake isn't just emotional or diplomatic. It's physical. Her biology has somehow synchronized with the idea of him. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Jake's communication device beeped. Another message from Velthara. He looked around the table, and Captain Morrison nodded for him to read it aloud. Communications Officer Martinez. I have spent the night studying human behavior patterns through your station's public records. Your species fascinates me. You combine direct honesty with compassionate flexibility in ways my people have forgotten. I wish to learn more about these qualities. Will you join me for what humans call an informal conversation? Absolutely not. Director Hayes said immediately. Martinez, you're not going anywhere near that ship. But Dr. Vasquez looked intrigued. Actually, sir, this might be our best opportunity to understand what's happening. If we don't figure out what Jake triggered, we could lose this alliance entirely. Or Jake could be in danger, Captain Morrison pointed out. I don't think she wants to hurt me. Jake said quietly. When I looked at her eyes yesterday, I didn't see threat. I saw curiosity. Like she was discovering something new about herself. Tommy leaned forward. Jake, what if this is like those old Earth stories about aliens abducting people? Except instead of probes, she wants to study your personality. That's not entirely wrong. Dr. Vasquez admitted. From what I can understand of their requests, Zephyrians seem to think Jake represents something they've lost in their own evolution. A kind of authentic directness they admire but can't replicate. Director Hayes sighed. So what are our options, Captain? Morrison counted on his fingers. 1. We transfer Jake back to Earth immediately and hope the Zephyrians don't consider it an insult. 2. We let him interact with Ambassador Velthara under controlled conditions and hope we can manage. Whatever happens next. 3. We try to explain human humor to an alien species that apparently doesn't understand the concept of jokes. Option 3 sounds impossible, Sarah Kim said. I've been working with Zephyrians for months. They don't have anything equivalent to sarcasm or playful deception in their culture. Jake looked around the table at all the worried faces. What if I just talked to her? Not on her ship, but here, in a controlled environment. Maybe I can explain what happened and fix this misunderstanding. Doctor. Vasquez nodded slowly. It might work. If Jake can demonstrate that his response was spontaneous rather than meaningful, it might break whatever psychological or biological loop Velthar is experiencing. And if it doesn't work, Director Hayes asked. Everyone looked at Jake, who suddenly felt the weight of two civilizations' future resting on his shoulders. Then I guess we find out what happens when you accidentally become the focus of an alien ambassador's undivided attention, he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Outside the conference room windows, the Zephyrian ship continued its golden, pulsing, like a giant heart beating in the darkness of space. The control meeting between Jake and Ambassador Velthar was scheduled for 1400 hours. In conference room beta, the room had been equipped with recording devices, emergency communication systems, and a security team stationed just outside. The door. Jake sat nervously at one end of the table while Dr. Vasquez and Captain Morrison flanked him. When Velthar entered the room, Jake immediately noticed the changes in her appearance. Her usually perfect diplomatic posture seemed more relaxed, almost predatory. Her eyes shifted between gold and a new color Jake had never seen before, a deep crimson. That seemed to glow with its own light. Communications Officer Martinez, she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that hadn't been there before. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Ambassador, Jake replied carefully. I wanted to explain about yesterday. What I said was meant as humor, a joke between friends. I didn't mean to cause any confusion. Velthar tilted her head, studying him with those strange gold and crimson eyes. You believe your words were without meaning? That's right, in human culture. We sometimes say things we don't really mean as a way of being playful. The ambassador moved closer, her tall frame casting a shadow over the table. But you did mean them. Jake Martinez, I can see the truth in your biological responses. Your heart rate increases when you look at me. Your pupils dilate. Your voice carries undertones of fascination. Dr. Vasquez spoke up. Ambassador, you're interpreting normal human nervousness as something else. Jake is anxious because this situation is new to him. Velthar's eyes flashed pure crimson for a moment. Dr. Vasquez, with respect, you do not understand what I am experiencing. Your species has awakened something in me that has been sleeping for generations. What exactly has been awakened? Captain Morrison asked. The ambassador turned her attention back to Jake, ignoring the others completely. My people evolved from hunters, Captain. Long ago, before we became civilized, we would choose a pack leader based on their ability to speak truth without fear. The one who could look into our eyes and state their desires directly, without hesitation or deception. Jake felt increasingly uncomfortable as Velthar continued to stare at him. But that was just evolution. You've moved beyond that now, have we? Velthar moved around the table, her movements graceful but somehow purposeful. When you said you wanted me, Jake Martinez, you spoke with directness my ancestors would have recognized as leadership. You awakened instincts my people thought were extinct. Dr. Vasquez frantically typed notes on her tablet. Ambassador, are you saying Jake's response triggered some kind of genetic memory? More than memory, Velthar replied, her eyes now pulsing. Between gold and crimson, it has changed my brain chemistry. I find myself thinking about him constantly, studying his behavior patterns, learning his daily routines. Captain Morrison leaned forward. Learning his routines how? Velthar's expression became almost shy. I have been watching. Your station's public areas provide many opportunities for observation. I have seen how Jake interacts with his colleagues, how he chooses his food, how he exercises in your fitness facility. You've been stalking me, Jake asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. Stalking is a predatory behavior. Velthar corrected. I am engaging in what my species calls worthiness assessment. I must understand if you are truly the leader my instincts have identified. Dr. Vasquez looked alarmed. What does worthiness assessment involve? Velthar's eyes brightened with excitement. I must test his problem-solving abilities, his courage under pressure, his capacity for making difficult decisions. Only then will I know if the recognition was accurate. Tests? Jake stood up, suddenly feeling like he needed to escape. Ambassador, I don't want to be tested. I just want to continue our diplomatic work normally. But that is impossible now, Velthara said, moving to block his path to the door. The recognition has occurred. My biology will not allow me to ignore it. Captain Morrison activated his communication device. Security to conference room beta. Captain, please, Velthara held up her hands. I mean no harm. But you must understand, Jake has become the most important thing in my existence. I cannot simply return to normal diplomatic relations. The security team entered the room, but stopped when they saw Velthara as non-threatening posture. Ambassador, Dr. Vasquez said carefully, what happens if Jake doesn't want to participate in these tests? Velthara's eyes flashed pure crimson. That would indicate he is not the leader I believe him to be, but it would also mean my biological recognition was incorrect, which is considered impossible in our history. So what would happen then? Jake asked. I do not know, Velthara admitted. No Zephyrian has experienced failed recognition in over 1,000 years. The psychological damage could be severe. Captain Morrison rubbed his temples. So we're dealing with an alien ambassador who has biologically bonded with one of our officers, and separating them could cause her mental breakdown? That is a simplified but accurate assessment. Velthara confirmed. Jake looked around the room at the worried faces of his colleagues. What kind of test are we talking about? Velthara's expression brightened immediately. Nothing harmful. I simply need to observe how you handle unexpected challenges, how you make decisions under pressure, how you interact with others when you believe yourself unobserved. That still sounds like stalking, Tommy Chen said from the doorway. Where? He had been listening. Your friend speaks with the same directness you do, Velthara observed. Interesting. Perhaps this quality is common among your species. Dr. Vasquez stood up suddenly. Ambassador, may I ask you something? You mentioned this recognition hasn't happened in 1,000 years. What stopped it from happening? We became civilized, Velthara replied. We learned to value diplomatic protocol over honest expression. We trained ourselves to hide our true thoughts behind polite conversation. We evolved beyond the need for pack leaders. But Jake's response brought those instincts back. Jake's response proved that somewhere in the universe, there are still beings who can speak truth without fear. It made me remember what my people once were and what we might become again. Jake sat back down heavily. So this isn't just about me. This is about your entire species. Velthara nodded. You have become a symbol, Jake Martinez. Proof that the old ways, the honest ways, still exist. My people are already asking questions about humans that they have never asked about any other species. What kind of questions? Captain Morrison asked. They want to know how you maintain authenticity in a complex society, how you balance honesty with diplomacy, how you can joke about serious things without losing respect for them. Dr. Vasquez looked excited despite the situation. This could be the beginning of a much deeper cultural exchange than we ever imagined. Or, Jake said quietly, it could be the beginning of me never having a normal life again. Outside the conference room windows, the Zephyrian ship's golden lights had been joined by other vessels. 3 more Zephyrian ships had arrived during the night, all displaying the same rhythmic pulsing pattern. Velthara noticed Jake looking at the ships. My people are curious about the human who awakened their ambassador's recognition instincts. They have come to observe. Great, Jake muttered. Now I have an audience. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control, and Jake realized that. His simple joke had started something that might change both their species forever. Jake hadn't slept well in 3 days. Every time he walked through the station corridors, he could feel eyes watching him through the observation windows that connected to the Zephyrian ships, for vessels now surrounded diplomatic station Harmony, their golden lights creating an eerie glow that never stopped pulsing. Dr. Vasquez had been working around the clock, trying to understand what Jake had accidentally triggered. She found him in the observation lounge at 0300 hours, staring out at the alien fleet. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, settling into the chair beside him. Hard to sleep when you know an entire alien species is studying your every move, Jake replied. Any luck with your research? Dr. Vasquez activated her portable display, showing complex biological charts. I've been digging through every piece of Zephyrian history we have access to. What I found is troubling, more troubling than having an alien ambassador who thinks I'm her destined leader. Jake, this goes deeper than we thought. The Zephyrians didn't just evolve from pack hunters. They were apex predators who formed lifelong bonds with alpha leaders. When they became civilized, they thought they had completely suppressed these instincts. Jake turned away from the window, but they didn't know. They just buried them so deep that it took contact with humans to bring them back to the surface. And it's not just Velthara anymore. Dr. Vasquez pulled up new data. I've been monitoring communications between the Zephyrian ships. At least 12 other ambassadors are reporting similar reactions to different humans on the station. The golden eyes, the intense focus, the need to study and test. 12 others. Jake felt his stomach drop. Who? Tommy Chen has attracted the attention of Ambassador Kethmer. Sarah Kim is being observed by Ambassador Zilthik. Even Captain Morrison has caught the interest of their military liaison. Jake rubbed his forehead. So this isn't about me specifically. It's about humans in general. That's what I thought at first. But then I found something interesting in their ancient texts. Dr. Vasquez highlighted a section of translated Zephyrian writing. They have legends about the awakening species, a race they would encounter among the stars. Who would remind them of what they once were? You think they were talking about us? I think their ancestors somehow predicted this encounter. Look, at this passage, they will speak without masks, laugh without fear, and choose bonds over protocols. In their presence, the sleeping hunter will remember the joy of the chase. Jake stared at the text. That's terrifyingly accurate. It gets worse, according to these legends. The awakening species would either help the Zephyrians evolve to a new level of existence, or the biological confusion would destroy both civilizations. Before Jake could respond, his communication device chirped with an urgent message from Captain Morrison. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a situation. When Jake and Dr. Vasquez arrived at the command center, they found chaos. Multiple screens showed communications from Earth Command, Zephyrian fleet commanders, and various diplomatic channels, all trying to manage the crisis. What's happening? Jake asked. Captain Morrison pointed to the main display. The Zephyrian Empire has issued what they call a biological imperative. They're sending a full diplomatic fleet to study human behavior. 200 ships are heading our way. 200? Dr. Vasquez looked shocked. It gets worse. Sarah Kim said from her communications station. The Zephyrian High Council has declared that humans represent either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat their species has ever encountered. They want to determine which one before anyone else makes contact with us. Director Hayes appeared on the main screen, looking exhausted. Martinez, this situation has moved beyond station-level diplomacy. The entire future of human-alien relations may depend on how we handle the next few days. Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. Sir, what do you need me to do? That's the problem. We don't know. The Zephyrians are insisting that the recognition bonds that have formed are sacred to their culture. They can't simply ignore them without severe psychological consequences. Tommy Chen spoke up from his workstation. Jake, Ambassador Kethmer, has been sending me puzzles to solve. Mathematical problems, logic games, ethical dilemmas. It's like she's testing my intelligence. Ambassador Zilthik has been doing the same with me, Sarah added. But her tests are more about leadership and decision-making under pressure. Dr. Vasquez pulled up her research again. This matches the historical pattern. In ancient Zephyrian society, potential pack leaders were tested in multiple areas before being accepted. Intelligence, courage, empathy, problem-solving ability. But we're not trying to become their pack leaders. Jake protested. We're just trying to be diplomats. The problem is, their biology doesn't recognize that distinction anymore. Dr. Vasquez explained. To them, anyone who displays the qualities of authentic leadership automatically becomes a candidate for The bond. Captain Morrison looked grim. So what are our options? We could try to fake failing their tests, Tommy suggested. Show them we're not worthy of their attention. That could backfire, Dr. Vasquez warned. If they believe the recognition was false, it could cause severe psychological trauma to the affected ambassadors. We might accidentally start a war. Jake stood up suddenly. What if we don't try to escape the bond? What if we try to understand it instead? Everyone turned to look at him. Think about it. Jake continued. These tests, this recognition, it's not about domination or control. It's about finding partners who can help them grow beyond their current limitations. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. You might be right. The ancient texts mentioned that successful recognition bonds led to evolutionary leaps for both species involved. So, instead of fighting this, maybe we should embrace it, Jake said. Show them that humans can form partnerships based on mutual respect and growth, not just biological imperatives. Director Hayes leaned forward on the screen. That's a huge risk, Martinez. If you're wrong, you could be committing humanity to a relationship we don't understand. And if we run away, we could be destroying the chance for the greatest alliance in human history. Jake replied. Sarah Kim looked up from her communication station. Jake, I'm getting a message from Ambassador Velthara. She says the testing phase is almost complete. She wants to meet with you for what she calls the final understanding. Jake took a deep breath. What does that mean? Dr. Vasquez checked her research. According to the historical records, it's when both sides decide whether to form a permanent partnership or acknowledge that the recognition was unsuccessful. No pressure, Tommy muttered. Jake looked around the room at his colleagues and friends. If I do this, I'm not just representing myself. I'm representing all of humanity. That's been true since the moment you made that joke, Captain Morrison said quietly. Outside the command center windows, the Zephyrian fleet continued its golden, pulsing, waiting for an answer that would determine the future of two civilizations. The meeting room had been transformed for what the Zephyrians called the final understanding. Instead of the usual sterile conference setup, they had arranged cushions in a circle, with soft lighting that reminded Jake of a campfire gathering. Ambassador Velthara sat across from him, her eyes shifting between gold and crimson in the familiar rhythm he had come to recognize. Jake Martinez, she began, her voice carrying a formality that hadn't been there in days. We have reached the moment of decision, round the station. Jake knew that similar conversations were happening between other humans and their Zephyrian counterparts. Tommy, Sarah, Captain Morrison, and 8 others were all facing the same choice he was about to make. I understand, Ambassador. But before we proceed, I need to ask you something. Velthara tilted her head curiously. Speak freely. What do you actually want from this partnership? Not what your biology is telling you, but what you personally hope to gain. The question seemed to surprise her. Her eyes flickered to a soft blue. The color Jake had learned indicated deep thought. In 3 months of diplomatic contact, she said slowly, you are the first human to ask me what I want for myself rather than what my species requires. Because that's what real partnership means, Jake replied. 2 individuals choosing to work together, not because they have to, but because they want to. Velthara's eyes brightened with understanding. This is what I hope to learn from you. My people have become so focused on duty and protocol that we forgot about personal choice. Dr. Vasquez, who was monitoring the conversation from the observation room, made notes on her tablet through the communication system. Jake could hear similar breakthroughs happening in other rooms around the station. So what do you choose, Velthara? Jake asked, using her name without the formal title for the first time. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment when she spoke again. Her voice was different, more personal, less diplomatic. I choose to learn from you, not because my biology demands it, but because I admire how humans balance honesty with kindness. You spoke directly to me that first day, but when you realized it caused confusion, you tried to fix it rather than run away. That is the kind of leadership my people need to remember. Jake felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, and I choose to learn from you. Your people's dedication to growth and understanding. is something humanity could benefit from, but as equals, not as some mystical leader and follower relationship. Velthara's eyes began to change. The gold and crimson swirl faded, replaced by something Jake had never seen before, a soft silver light that seemed to glow with warmth rather than intensity. What does silver mean? Jake asked. It means partnership chosen freely, Velthara replied, a smile transforming her alien features. It is the rarest color in our emotional spectrum, because it requires both individuals to transcend their biological imperatives and choose connection based on mutual respect. Throughout the station, other conversations were reaching similar conclusions. Jake could hear Tommy laughing with Ambassador Kethmer about the mathematical puzzles she had created. Sarah was discussing leadership philosophy with Ambassador Zilthik as equals. Rather than test subjects, Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the communication system. Jake, we're getting reports from all the meeting rooms, every human Zephyrian pair is showing the same silver eye color. This is unprecedented. Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation. And we're receiving transmissions from the Zephyrian fleet. They're asking for permission to establish a joint research station where both species can study this new form of partnership. Jake looked at Velthara. What do you think? Are your people ready for that kind of cooperation? I believe this experience has changed us as much as it has changed you, she replied. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrians are questioning whether our old ways of rigid hierarchy and protocol are truly the best path forward. Director Hayes appeared on the main communications screen. Martinez, we're getting incredible reports from all the humans Zephyrian pairs. It seems like everyone has found a way to transform biological compulsion into voluntary partnership. That's because humans have something Zephyrians lost long ago, Jake said, looking around the room. We know how to adapt without losing who we are. We can be serious about important things while still finding ways to laugh and connect with each other. Velthara nodded in agreement. And Zephyrians have something humans are still learning, the dedication to continuous growth and improvement. Together, we can help each other become better than either species could be alone. Tommy's voice came through the communication system from another room. Hey Jake. Ambassador Kethmer says her people want to establish joint colonies where humans and Zephyrians can live and work together, not as leaders and followers, but as partners exploring what's possible when the species truly collaborate. The Zephyrian High Council has approved the proposal, Captain Morrison announced. They're officially inviting humanity to join them in establishing what they're calling evolution. Colonies, communities dedicated to helping both species grow beyond their current limitations. Jake stood up and extended his hand to Velthara. She looked at it curiously, then reached out and grasped it in the human gesture of partnership. To new beginnings, Jake said. To chosen partnerships, Velthara replied, her silver eyes glowing with warmth. 6 months later, Jake stood on the balcony of the first evolution colony, built on a moon in the Kepler 440 system. Below him, humans and Zephyrians worked together in gardens, laboratories, and workshops, creating something neither species had imagined possible. Velthara joined him, her eyes still showing the silver glow that had become the symbol of their new form of alliance. Do you ever regret making that joke? She asked. Jake laughed, the sound carrying across the colony where both species had learned to appreciate human humor. Best mistake I ever made. Though I still can't believe it started with me trying to win a 5-credit bet. Your friend Tommy reminds me of that fact regularly. Velthara said with what Jake had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of a chuckle. He says humans call it the butterfly effect, how small actions can lead to enormous changes. And now we have 12 evolution colonies across 3 star systems, Jake mused. All because a bunch of humans decided to be honest about who we are. And a group of Zephyrians chose to grow beyond who they thought they had to be. Velthara's silver eyes pulsed gently. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to the universe, the ability to turn accidents into opportunities and problems into partnerships. As the binary sun set over their shared world, Jake realized that sometimes the most important moments in history begin with the simplest human responses: honesty, curiosity, and the willingness to try something new. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone.